Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of this series where we celebrate the life of Master Sergeant Gregory Trent. Today you're going to hear from an extremely pivotal member of ODA 3424 and that of Carl Hoover. Carl was not only the team sergeant for that deployment, Carl was the 18 Delta, and for those of you that don't know what that is, that's a Special Forces medic. The level of training that a Special Forces medic goes through is extremely intense. It's the longest training there is in the Special Forces pipeline, and you know they're extremely proficient medics. Carl, it's an honor to have you on this project, doing this journey as we celebrate Greg's life. I know this is not an easy day for you to relive. This story is not an easy story for you to relive. You know, you and I, when we did our prep and our prep work for this podcast, you know, I know how important this story is. I know how important this team is to you, and I know how hard this was. Not because you didn't want to talk about Greg, but this is something that, you know, is very close hold. It's kind of been interesting the last couple of days. I mean, you were that team sergeant, but in many aspects, you're still the team sergeant for that team. I mean, this entire time that we've been here, you know, you've been in and out of our house, you know, this shooting location we've been, you know, to make sure that every person from this team, from the team captain and the other guys on the team, to even people, you know, on the other team like Kevin came here, that you were here, that they saw you, that, you know, that they realized that they weren't doing this project alone. And I think that just speaks volume to me and to my team of just who you are and who you were during that deployment and who you still are now, even after your service. So from the bottom of my heart, from me and my family, but also from our production team here, I just want to thank you. Thank you for your sacrifice to this nation and for who you are, both who you were on active duty, but who you are now, even as a human. Thank you for being here, and thank you for taking this journey with us.
I appreciate that. And just a couple real quick things. We all lived through our experiences, and I wasn't always, after the fact, like years after the fact, I wasn't always the team sergeant I wanted to be. We all go through our dark times. So I really appreciate the opportunity because it's also a chance to remember who you were and what mattered. And that's really it.
Yeah, awesome. Carl, can you share a little bit about your upbringing and early influences that shaped your path toward military medicine and leadership?
Yeah, absolutely. To be honest, I'm kind of a little bit of the opposite side of the story. I came from a relatively affluent family. Most of them were doctors. And jokingly, I ran away and joined the circus, which is doing that because I did not want to do medicine. The irony of life. I absolutely did not want to do medicine. Both my parents were master's degree holders and taught middle school. My mother was a middle school English teacher. My father was a middle school math teacher before he moved on to do more engineering for HVAC systems, for high-end HVAC systems. And they were absolutely the epitome of conservative hippie 60s that kind of stayed a little more conservative towards the end. So I was a pretty feral, free-range child, which was great. I didn't get pigeonholed in anything, but it got pretty lonely. And then kind of got forced into more of some of the professional horse business inside of that. I didn't like some of the trauma and stuff that went along with that. So kind of one day, instead of, like I said, my story's a little different than a lot of others. Instead of taking the Annapolis appointment from a client, I decided to follow my high school BFF and go enlist. And then my parents arbitrarily signed the delayed entry contract. Apparently they had a kind of a running bet with each other of how long I would last, just because of dealing with the quintessential military thing.
Imagine starting at the line, heart pounding, ready to earn your place among the elite. At Titan Coaching, former Rangers, Green Berets, SOF, airmen, and law enforcement specialists stand beside you, guiding every step of your journey. From land navigation drills and brutal ruck marches to pool prep for dive school and long-distance runs, they craft a plan tailored to your goal. SFAS, Ranger School, BUDS, Delta Selection, MARSOC, or law enforcement careers, you'll master body mechanics, dial in nutrition, and build mental resilience before and after the grind. If you're serious about earning the right to wear the badge or a tab, visit TitanCoaching.com for an exclusive consult. Titan Coaching, your advantage starts here. So what really led you to Special Forces and going into Special Operations?
Honestly, it was the trip that you had previously mentioned, the Kuwait trip, if I believe it was like end of 98, 99. It's been a couple years now. So I had it, I was a Cab Scout like Dave Waldo, and did it. And I loved being a Cab Scout at the time. But Force 21, for some of those, the Y2K, the 2000 changeover, they decided to revamp all sorts of things. So dismounted squad was going away. And we also had a quintessential tanker as a company commander, which wasn't a bad guy. It was just, you will absolutely wear your full flak vest and all that. And Kuwait was 142 degrees during the day. Flak vests aren't known for breathing, plus carrying weight, water, like, hey, we can't handle that. Well, it's part of the risk assessment. You'll do it. And then I still remember it was a great team, but I still remember like halfway through a 25K, basically dead reckoning movement, like being asked, like, do you know where we are? Hopefully we're still in Kuwait. Because we're pretty near Iraq, but that could go a little different. So we get out there, we get set up. The water cached for us the previous night was basically set on the side of a sand dune. And that stuff, by the time during the day, was too hot to drink. We go through all of this. It's the stereotypical, it kind of sucked a lot. And then all of a sudden, after the training mission, we're about to walk back, and these random dune buggies come out of nowhere, driving by, and like, hey, you guys all right? I still remember like, all right, awesome. American, oh, service, awesome. This is where I think we're on the map. Are we there? Like, you're doing great, man. That's exactly where you are. I'm like, oh, thank God. All right, so we're not lost. They're like, could you boys use some water? I'm like, absolutely. And they open these coolers in the back of these dune buggies. And I'm not gonna say there was light beer in there. There could have been, but there was like sodas and there was huge bottles of water. So remember I'm tossing these bottles of water to us, and that stuff was too cold to drink. Like you like take a sip and get an ice cream headache because it's 140 degrees out. I'm like, wow, who are you? So we walked back, we got that, and the unit, we're clearing weapons, because for those that don't know, like some of those Kuwait trips, like you fell in all the gear that you had there. Basically traveled light, you fall in all the weapons and vehicles. So we're cleaning weapons, and we weren't allowed to use the washing machines. That's what I called them. They had the overall washing machines, because those were bad for the guns. And meanwhile, again, same guys I just saw 3 days earlier, probably a month earlier, it doesn't really matter, came in and they put their guns in the machine, left one person to guard it, and then took a SUV downtown to go grab chow and bring back. I'm like, all right, that's some common sense. What do you do? Hey, we're in 5th group. How do I get there? Go to selection. How do I do that? Go talk to the recruiter. Which recruiter? Yeah, which led to it, and then which led to me to going to speak to the SF recruiter, and the rest is kind of history.
Going through SFAS and then later on the Q course, how did you end up becoming an 18 Delta medic?
They picked it. I still remember I put Charlie twice, because like I said, I wanted to pass the Q course. not do that. But apparently I did well enough on the logic test and all the others. I still remember being pulled back in for second interview, like, you're a Delta. Like, damn. Not because it was like, damn, to be a Delta, like, that's 52 weeks without a recycle and has a high attrition. And there's no guarantees that you're going to be recycled in another MOS. I'm like, damn, okay, let's do this.
Awesome. And then, I mean, after, graduating the Q course and going to third group, did you do any deployments before you ended up on 3424 and quasi?
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up on 332. Like I said, I originally went to third group. Like it says, some guy, like, every person has their crutch. I personally picked bad relationships. So I went through a little bit of that, had a snafu on the first team. Awesome. Like, they love me. I love them to this day. God rest the team sergeant's soul, and did that, but they found me a place and home on 3-2. So I kind of grew up in 3-3-2. Awesome. Loved it. Like I said, ran into kind of that do or die moment. Like, I pigeonholed myself into a bad relationship. The team itself supported me with it. Got through that, and after a bit of a trip, full trip, another half trip, and then ended up going to SWIC to just get things right. And also at the same time, teach back at the 18 Delta course.
Awesome. So sometime around 2011, you end up on ODA 3424. How did you end up over there?
Honestly, when I was leaving SWIC, the Sergeant Major at the time was an absolutely, Sergeant Major Dwayne. He was awesome. Because when you're coming back as more of a long in a 2 senior 7, you're kind of expecting to go back to a shop, especially like the 3 shop. It makes common sense, or at the very least a B team. So I talked with them, and it was kind of a running joke in SWIC because I tried another 3-4 times to stand in for Halo School, and I kind of became a pet mascot of not quite ever making the final cut. I got really good at prepping to go to Halo School. I just never quite made the cut because it wasn't a hard slot. There was always somebody that beat me into it. Even with a friend there, even with some blatant nepotism, never managed to get in there. So Sergeant Dwayne hooked me up. It's like, hey, it's 4th Battalion, but there's a couple slots, been talking with it. We can get you back to a team on 4th Battalion. And I was like, for real? Absolutely. He's like, oh, and the cake is like, it's the 4th team, it's the free fall. I'm like, heck yeah. All right, awesome. So it was a little bit of that. Came back to 4th Battalion, was absolutely looking at trying to play kind of Greyman for a little bit, and wound up on 2-4.
What was your earliest recollections of meeting Greg Trent?
Really, this showing up at 2-4, because it was a different set of nerves coming back. Like, I'm coming back, I'm a new guy, I'm just gonna be Greyman on the wall. Got it. It wasn't like being a fresh Q course grad coming back. It was a little different, like just gonna kind of feel things out. And I still remember like walking into the team room, there was some changeover, and Greg's smile. Honestly, the first thing is Greg's smile. It's like, hi, how are you doing? Like, welcome back. Because we knew of each other. I mean, I grew up in 1st Battalion, same thing. So we knew of each other. It was like, how are you doing? And then his laugh was very welcoming.
What was your initial impressions of him?
Awesome.
Kind of, what drew you to connect with him on like a deeper level?
Silliness. I'm sure that you've had everybody come through here talked about technical and tactical proficiency, and that's absolutely it. Greg was technically and tactically proficient as hell. But it was also one of those rare people. That doesn't mean that you can't have some fun and you can't smile while you're doing it. It could have been the suckiest moment ever, and I can't even really say there was one. Well, there was one statement, and I'll finish that. But for the vast majority of it, there was never like one statement that he made, like reconnecting and really getting to know him. It was just that he'd just look over at you while people are briefing and just give you that smile. And it's hard. And then now you're trying not to laugh in the midst of being serious. I can't remember what it was. Let's arbitrarily say I think it was an arms room draw, because he did this all the time. Like, hey, we're going to draw weapons at 3 tomorrow. And Greg, out of like left field, like, in the morning? I wish I could recreate it as funny as he said it, but it was just that off-putting, and it was so sincere. Like, it didn't ever make anybody, even the person briefing, as serious as they tried to be, it was just completely disarming. And like, to this day, I still do that. Like, you tell me we're gonna do something tomorrow at 5. I'm like, in the morning? In the morning? Like, are you kind of that awkward inflection, like, are you crazy?
You and Greg had history, knew each other from kind of some earlier deployments. You guys clicked over Zinc Lozenges and the Carl G cocktails during training. What's the memory of him that hit you hardest from those days? Like his laugh, his calmness, his quirks?
Smile. Like, it was genuinely fun to be around him. Like you mentioned the Zinc Lozenges, that was just, the science is sketchy, but we claimed it was science. Like, drinking inhibits memory, but is zinc the vital compound? Let's try and pound some zinc lozenges and see if that helps. Did it? Was it placebo effect? Don't know. But it was an outstandingly great time. It was just silly while being serious.
Awesome. You know, Greg was kind of your rock, man. You guys both, early after you guys get into Afghanistan, you guys are both soon to be E8s. You guys are both long in the tooth, sharing, existential talks about the war. How did those late night chats, questioning if you were the bad guys, were you guys the good guys, deepen your trust in him before that 2012 deployment?
A lot. I don't know if deepening trust is the right thing, because the trust was there. But to expound on that, it was kind of one of those things, like I spent some time in Farah, and Greg had already spent some time in Shindand. There are ops that already got run in the Zirko Valley. And when you start doing the backwards math, you're like, oh, it's 2012 now. That was 5 years. A 12, 13, 14-year-old, like, wait, they're the fighting age male now. Are they fighting because they believe in the dogma of the Taliban or the Caliphate? Or are they fighting because we came into their compound and shot people up? Now, what I want people to understand is that wasn't a questioning of what we're there. It was just literally exploring a mental thought process, like exploring it. And I think as you become a seasoned or an older warrior soldier, if you don't do those thought experiments, well, then you're just blindly following and doing. You've got to look at those thought experiments, because if you don't, then there's no empathy. Like, as SF, you're there for by, with, and through. So whether or not you agree with it, fully embrace it, but if you don't explore things from the other viewpoint, well, that's not empathy. You've got to explore stuff from the other viewpoint. And Greg and Dave too, but like Greg, from just being around a little bit, was outstanding, like just awesome, like had no qualms about exploring that stuff from another viewpoint. Like, could it be? Like, yeah, well, it could be, depending on how you looked at it. That didn't change the mission the next day. That didn't change your commitment to it. It was just exploring, like, oh, Okay, well, that's another way to look at it. All right, so if we're looking at it like that, well, then how do we work with that? How do we deal with that?
Well, and I think it explores the human aspect and the fact that although we're warriors, I mean, we're all humans, right? And I think as you guys were going into these village stability operations, I think that probably played a crucial role to later both your role as the team sergeant and Greg's role as the 18 Fox, as you guys are trying to understand this area where you're now supposed to work by, with, and through your partner forces to help understand, you know, the psyche of, or at least try to understand the psyche of this land where you're, you know, trying to bring peace and get rid of evil. So it actually makes a lot of sense to me. Can you share a memory or a moment with Greg that kind of stands out, one that exemplifies the bond you guys formed over time?
The problem is one.
Yeah.
Honestly, the one that stands out right now. I swear I came into this day thinking of all sorts of ones to speak of. But the one that stands out was honestly the day that he got hit. So and I know we're going to come back to it, but full context, it was a long, like, we decided to go have a sleepover with the ALP, the Afghan local police, that we're just doing it. I mean, you can call it all sorts of mission stuff, but we went and had a sleepover. Like, let's spend some time. Like, we're spending some time with our partner force. You can church it up however you want for mission, but we're going to spend time with it. But it's like going to the other family's house. You know, the one that makes you tired? So we went and spent time with the other family's house. So we're dead dog. And of course we do it on foot because you can't go 5 feet during that trip without hitting an IED. So just do it on foot. Eliminate that. So we're out on foot. I think, if I remember correctly, we were split in like 3 different elements, possibly 4-ish. Just trying to go spend some time with the ALP. We're on our way back. And of course, the southern element, of course, Murphy's Law, takes contact when, like, we're already trying to come into the VSP. Like, all we're trying to get done is called game over so we can go to bed, like real bed. But no, you start hearing the popcorn going off down south. You're like, what? So we start walking, and then Greg was back. And I still remember there's this, the way the village was set up, there was some compounds and then a big open field and kind of a weird L, kind of equilateral, just square. It was 800 meters across it. And I still remember, I want to say Mike was pseudo IMTing. The infantry cats next to us, they were full, like, I'm up, they see me, I'm down. Meanwhile, Greg and I are walking across the field. Like, they're shooting at us from over a K out. It's like a lightning strike. You're like, wow, that looks tiring. And I still remember, like, I want to say Greg was like, good job. Like, and it's surreal. And maybe you have to be there to understand the humor of it. But we're walking next to each other. And infantry cats are like IMTing. Now, don't get me wrong, every now and then you get a little weary, but I want to say Greg, like, looked over and like, good job. Meanwhile, we're walking. Like that, yeah. And we get to this wall about yay high, and we're standing behind it, and of course we're taking contact from that side, and meanwhile we're exhausted, just tired. I get it. I mean, people get like tired, like, and you're wearing weight. We're standing behind, and we're definitely not spring chickens anymore. So the lower back's like screaming, and we're standing behind this wall. And I look at Greg, I'm like, well, I guess we should act like soldiers. And Greg, like you ever see the pictures of people like doing the back and forth behind the couch, acting like they're going downstairs? Kind of pseudo like that, like Greg just, without breaking eye contact, just kind of lowers himself behind the wall while he's smiling at me. But that was great. Like, I can't recreate, hysterical. Even if you didn't laugh out loud, just hysterical and stuck, like, that was it. Like, in the midst of this suck, just
Still having
laughing.
Yeah, that's awesome. January 2012, man, you're thrust into the team sergeant role for ODA 3424. Your team sergeant is relieved within 16 hours into your RIP, which is relief in place, which is what they call when one team comes in and replaces another team. I remember you telling me you were just a little bit nervous, but you're coaching the team your way. How did Greg steady you in those first weeks, especially as you guys were running split team ops in a dangerous part of Afghanistan?
All right, so the first thing is a little bit nervous is the epitome of an understatement. Anxiety. And it's not that, everybody's goal on a team is, make it the team sergeant, like be the team sergeant. But there's a different, the team sergeant is the rock, the person that has the answers. Wait, this guy? I pseudo consider myself not a hot mess, but wow, I'm not done being silly. And Greg was absolutely a risk because it was a rock kind of the same way because we joked with each other. We swear the only reason that we both made 8 is because we actually got a DA photo that the year prior with the new uniform. They're like, wow, they didn't promote us on merit, us. Really? So Greg being there and just doing that, and like I said, coaching, we all learned a lot of hard lessons. And the epitome of wisdom is learning from other people's mistakes. You can only affect yourself. You can't make other people do things. However, absolutely can share hey, this is what I learned and how I learned it. Let's try not to go through as much pain to get there. And Greg was absolutely the same way. And the other unique aspect of that team is it really was a team. I had the position of being team sergeant. Okay, well, it's your job to lead, this is your job. We interchanged, Greg actually acted as team sergeant because we were split ops. There was 8 of us in split ops. A team's supposed to be 12, there's 8, and then we're split. So Greg was leading, managing the other half. I was on this half. And simple little things he'd call up on the Nipper phone because it had a speaker button. And then he'd just start playing Kesha. Kesha dance party. And that's all he'd say in the background. You could just see him doing a dance, Kesha dance party. Are you serious? And then hang up. And no, I'd hang up. Or somebody would hang up and he'd call back. Kesha dance party. I know that sounds silly. There were so many technical and tactical just proficiency aspects that he was there because he was an outstanding fox. But that's expected. To relate to it, every trip I've been on or people talking to, hey, why haven't you guys put in Valor Awards? Well, because everybody's been doing their job. So the same thing, it's expected to do your job. But the ability to just calm you down, that's different. And Greg was calming. I'm trying to give you a concise answer, but it's almost like I have to paint a picture.
Yeah, I think, the greatest thing, and I've said it on one of the other episodes, is the cool thing about this particular project we're doing is that everybody has a different piece of the puzzle of this story. And it's not very often you get a full 360 picture of a story. You get versions from maybe a couple different people and based on what they remember, but the cool thing that we're able to do with this story is put together a 360 picture of not only your team, of Greg and who Greg was and how people remembered him, but of the entire story. The story from the trip, the story of Greg, the story of ODA 3424, as it's seen not only from within your team, but even Kevin Robbins is going to tell us of, how great your team was from outside, being on a sister team. And I think that's The awesome story. So hearing your version from, what you remember, both as a team sergeant, but also as, Greg's friend, you guys are, kind of equals, both kind of long in the tooth on the team. It's definitely an interesting and a different and also still a refreshing look. There's a lot of things that happened to you on this trip. I know we talk a lot about Greg. That was a kinetic trip for your team, for the company, and also for the battalion. Hey everyone, we are excited to announce our new partnership with an awesome sponsor. When it's time to fuel my training, Alpha Country Training and Nutrition is my go-to. Founded by former Green Beret Spencer Lewis, Alpha Country crafts elite supplements to power warriors and athletes through the toughest challenges. They've got clean, effective supplements for endurance, strength, and recovery, plus apparel that actually performs. Whether you're grinding out early mornings or long miles, Alpha Country helps fuel that mission. One of their flagship products, Stay Ready Endurance, is a game changer, packed with cluster dextrin and mod carb, a premium, fast-acting, and slow-releasing carbohydrate source that keeps you fueled throughout your duration of your training. It's packed with blueberry and goji berry powders for natural antitoxin protection, has a full multivitamin blend inside, and also has electrolyte support through Himalayan pink salt and potassium. Clean, easy to digest, no bloating or heavy sugar crash that keeps you hydrated and energized during grueling workouts. Whether you're rucking in the heat, crushing high-intensity workouts, or training for Special Forces selection, this intro workout formula prevents fatigue and keeps you in the fight. Every ingredient is hand-selected for maximum performance because Spencer learned in the field, generic supplements just don't cut it. Alpha Country's entire line is built on transparency and quality, helping you recover faster and train harder. Ready to lead by example? Go to thealphacountry.com and use Vanguard 20 for 20% off your first order. That's thealphacountry.com, code Vanguard 20 for 20% off your first order. Power up and stay fueled with Alpha Country. Your body, your community, and your country deserve it. You'd been blown up earlier in the trip. It hasn't really been talked about so far, and I'm not going to completely let you get away with it. You ended up getting, 7 days of amnesia. You got a Purple Heart because, Mike crammed it down your throat. Tell us a little bit about what happened, when you got blown off the roof and half of your team, including your team commander, didn't even know about it for a couple days.
Well, they knew about it. All right. So just truth in lending, everybody got blown up that trip.
There.
And to borrow from Greg, I know I keep coming back to Greg, but it was those simple dialogues of just, it's almost like two brothers that had their own little language, but that was the team language. We joked, we constantly joked, this is the worst 2012 ever. But that year sucked. It can look like green on blue, and for those that don't know it, that's your partner in force deciding to turn on you and shoot you in your sleep, or when you're not expecting it. Horrible, horrible year for everybody green and blue. Regular military suffered. The SEALs got it bad. So just a shout out, they got it bad. MARSOC had it bad. We had it bad. So that's outside of stereotypical kinetic. And then it was surprising because Greg and I talked about it why is this my most kinetic trip yet? We're doing it, not supposed to be this kinetic now. It was just a very kinetic trip and everybody got blown up. And in the spirit of village stability ops, you're not supposed to alienate your populace, but there was an IED every bloody time we went out. And Mike and then Charlie's Tim, Bart, they were hounds. Mike had an uncanny sense for finding them. And then also, but it got tiring, always IEDs. So that day got blown up, we were doing a KLE, a key leader engagement, up kind of west of Shindand, kind of west of Tutu, because Tutu had to run, they were doing commando mission. Our mission was more of the village, the by, with, and through. So yeah, let's roll up there, kind of help facilitate some of their white space. And for those that don't know, white space just being your kind of freedom and maneuver, you're relatively safe to not get zapped, relative being the key word. So we go up there and then we're coming back and we're well, let's be unpredictable. Yeah, We got unpredictable because trying to get across the river through a village, you're like, you know where you're going, you can see it, but getting there. And then we wound up taking like crazy route. We got to where we knew, and then, so backside, a little bit of ADD, but a backside in here is there was poppy eradication going on at the point. We had nothing to do with that. I mean, that's the exact opposite you want to do for village stability is start talking about eradicating off of political reasons, local politics, somebody's cash crop. It doesn't matter if you agree with it or not. When a person's got to feed their family, that's a cash crop. So having nothing to do with it. But here we were, armed forces coming around through an area that we've been plenty of times because we got to it, and then kind of a weird S through the village. And of course, there at the corner, what's there? Yet again, another IED. So we're in side-by-sides and four-wheeler, because for the general speaking, the easiest way to avoid improvised explosive devices is just not be where they are. But we're channelized in this point, so we've got to be where they are. So we prep. I'm in a four-wheeler, just kind of high ground. So I just go ahead and push the far side to start blocking any potential local traffic. And so that we can reasonably assuredly do radio comms. Hey, we're about to bip an IED. Everything's cordoned off. And there's a small little building about the size of this room with a little rounded top on it with a wall. It's easy enough to hop up on it and see. So I hop up and see it. I'm sitting there. And we're doing it, and Mike comes up to bip this IED. And Mike obviously was Echo, then did the warrant thing, but also as a sapper instructor. So very savvy with doing that, which made it more funny because he is very savvy at doing that. So he walks up there, and he'll tell you all the technical stuff about it. I'm not going to do the technical. I'm going to talk about the humorous aspect. So he walks up there, he sets all the stuff up for bipping this IED. Pulls it, fire in a hole, goes back, and it's... And of course, we all start freaking rolling on the radio because what are you going to do to your friends when Murphy's... Of course you're going to razz them. Yeah. So we're doing that, and goes back, redoes it, and he'll tell you, and yes, he's 100% right in all the technical stuff, but it was funny. It really was. He goes back to reset it, and he's starting to walk by, and then all of a sudden, the Angry Hornets start. Pop, pop. I'm like, what the fuck? So looking around, and then I still remember laughing. In the midst, like, I've never laughed at the beginning of a firefight, because step one of a firefight, if it's not a holy cow ambush yet, is, are we being shot at? And then the second thing is smokeless powder works. Like, where are we being shot at from? Because once you've been around the block a little bit, the last thing you want to redo again is jump on the side of the wall for cover and realize you're on the side of the wall that they're actually shooting at you from. So they're like, where's it coming from? And I still remember Mike. I swear I could be remembering it slightly wrong, more humorous, but I swear you could just see the wheels turning in his head because he's still danger close to the C4 he dropped. I still remember it, and then I swear all of a sudden I just see his shoulders go, whatever, and he blows it. Basically scoots himself forward and then runs away while the freaking rounds are going. Just the picture of it was in the midst of the chaos and fear at the beginning of a firefight. That is the first time and only time I think can say in my military career that I legitimately giggled at the beginning of a firefight. For that split second of time, because he was like, fuck it. It's just baby laugh. And then we go. So they're in it. A couple members are in a ditch. And now I'm legit, all right, team sergeant mode. I'm legit starting to like cuss at the team on the radio, like, look out of the kill zone. And honestly, the day that Greg got hit, to this day, I was more scared this day. Because Pat, the other medic, remember, a split team. So Pat Simmons and Greg were on the other side. They were on the tail end of us moving. And they're stuck behind a tiny bit of cover, but there's pseudo 3 stories on either side of them. So they're being shot at with machine guns and AKs from a near vertical angle. And I was legit like freaking the fuck out. Like, they're going to fucking die. Move. Like, move or die. Move. Like, rule one in an ambush. Outside of all the freaking battle drills, I mean, a boxing ring. Don't stand still. Move. So trying to get them to move, and the situation, even though you're staring at it, everybody's particular component of that situation wasn't fully developed yet. I did not know at this time that the one round that went through the radiator of the one side-by-side also clipped the cable for the accelerator. So you can hit the gas all you want. The friggin' leg bone's no longer connected to the hip bone. It ain't going. Still have a couple of the enablers in the ditch that, I mean, rightfully freaked out. And I dare say it may have been their first firefight, which, again, not the day for it, but stuff happens as it happens. They're in the ditch, like I'm freaking out. So I'm controlled, like move, like every 3 seconds move. And I look over, and it's one of those rare times. I don't care what Hollywood says. It's one of those rare times when you're not doing CQB, when it's out and about in the wilderness, firefight. Legit saw 3 dudes scoot up. And I can't vouch for what the front and the rear were carrying, but the dude in the middle was carrying a bloody RPG. So I was like, damn. And I still remember thinking, like, am I gonna do this? Because the Rambo myth is exactly that myth. You pick a fight with more than one person, you're getting your ass whooped. It's like, fuck, yeah, they're maneuvering. So I remember aiming on the first dude, popped him, got excited on the second shot, ended up getting him in the shoulder, spun him around, the third dude grabbed him, pulled him back with the RPG. Now, in my mind, this was all like 20 minutes long. Realistically, what, probably 10 seconds. I still remember like, oh shit, I haven't looked behind me. Like the entire rest of the valley is behind me. I'm like, I'm waiting to turn around.
And where are you at this point in this firefight?
So let's just call this a road. So they're taking cover, they're taking fire from up here. They're in the road, there's a bit of a ditch, that's what I was talking about. It came around. Greg and Pat are all the way over here with taking that. I'm kind of off over here doing front end cordon on. So I'm on a one-story building, more like an Afghan version of like a garage or an outbuilding with a domed roof. Dome was great at this point, a little bit of cover.
And you're on top of it?
Yep, I'm on top of it, so I can see a little bit what's going on. And then across from that diagonally was a main compound, which they were actually, a bunch of maneuver was farther back, but there was a small gap. And in that doorway, I think they were trying to maneuver through that to fire at them, but they didn't realize that I was up here.
Okay.
So I'm looking at them, but I dealt with that, still pissed off at the second shot. So I slow roll, look behind me, ready to see the Mongolian horde behind me because I didn't maintain 360. I was target fixated on the team in the kill zone, and then this, and I hadn't looked behind me in forever. So I slow roll, like look around, waiting. Nothing, crickets. I was like, oh, all right. Turn back forward, and the third guy is firing the RPG. I still remember, like, oh, like I was actually fearful for a second that I don't think I said it out loud, but my last words were gonna be, fuck me. And then I kind of came back. Next thing I really remember is I'm on the ground again. I'm like, I'm not supposed to be on the ground. I'm supposed to be up there. What's going on? And all my shit's discombobulated. And the thing, I think they hit the wall low and then overpressure blasted me off the roof. So I climb back up there. I'm like trying to get it, and I'm wearing Silinx at the time because the Peltors with all the tinnitus will do it. And then for these missions, the Silinx, if you're not familiar, was more of a earbud style thing. So I'm getting all that thing, finally get radio comms going again. And I'm like, what's up? And they're screaming at me. Like, I think David and Dave are like, where are you? I'm like, I'm right here. Why are you still out there? Like, dude, like, nobody like has heard from you in like 2 minutes. I'm like, what? And then fast forward. So it was comedy. And then fast forward, we did manage to get everybody consolidated to us. And that turned into 16 hours of just trying to get out of there because vehicle recovery.
How did Greg help you climb back from that TBI fog? I know they forced you to go somewhere. I know you and I talked about that, and you wanted to be anywhere but there.
No. Honestly, it was one of those few times. I don't really remember getting to it, but I remember him talking to me after, like, him and Mike. Like, I want to say, like, Greg's like, you know, I told you you needed to go. Because the TBI just hit, and also when I landed at some C-spine stuff. And the next thing I really remember is kind of waking up one morning at Leatherneck with, like, the fog lifted. I'm like, what the hell's going on? At the TBI clinic there in Leatherneck, which was in Afghanistan. Now, the team didn't do anything wrong. Like, I had gone up to the role 2, or the intermediate care, for lack of a better term, a couple times and had a couple MACE exams. But if you remember back, like, everybody was getting blown up that trip. I had done so many MACE exams. It was kind of like asking an eye doctor to use the smelling chart. Like, they got it memorized. I'm not saying that you can perfectly memorize a MACE exam, but my scores on the MACE exam looking back weren't bad. It was just, 'tis what it was. And the team kind of ran an intervention. And I go, Greg was big on that. So they got me out. And then basically, I still remember they turned Nipper off on me, because you're not supposed to do anything. But the team's doing all that, so I could keep doing NCRs. I can help Greg out, because Greg's playing team sergeant. So at least I'm going to do the NCRs. Well, that ticked him off, because you're not supposed to be using the computer with TBI. And I know this, I'm the medic, but medics are the worst patients. So I'm trying to do that, so they shut Nipper down. And then Greg thought it was hysterical. I'm like, all right, so I'll go for a walk. Well, they had college at Leatherneck, so I took a couple CLEP tests. Greg thought that was hysterical. I'm like, I'm bored. Finally begged my way back to the team so I was there for a little, like 3 weeks, a little over. Begged my way back through Siege of Sodef and MARSOC, because we were working under MARSOC in Sodef West, or the western part. Begged my way back with the promise that I'd stay in the wire for a month. I stayed in the wire for 3 weeks. And then, like I said, getting back there, and like I said, I loved the team because they didn't need me. We were all, it just jived, like Greg had it.
What did that mean to you coming back, having to leave as the team sergeant for, 3 weeks? You're kind of stuck somewhere you don't want to be. Coming back knowing that Greg kind of picked up the slack while you were gone and was able to kind of help you when you got back.
Awesome. Like, I know there's been like other questions, like did you all butt heads ever? Two fresh E8s? Never. It was never like that with teammates. It was just what position you were playing on the field that day, and Greg picked it up. So I had no worries as far as the managerial aspect of being team sergeant gone, which definitely freed up, because it was like Pat Simmons, my actual medic's like first trip was SOF, and he's trying to do that. So Greg had it covered, and it's like, get better so that they don't force you to go home, so you can come back.
Kind of going backwards a little bit. I know we've talked to several other teammates during this, process. You guys originally were supposed to go to the eastern part of Afghanistan, and 2 weeks prior, you guys ended up going to western Afghanistan. You've already deployed in a special operations capability. You and Greg were, kind of close. He's the Fox. He had been to that area before and knew it was going to be bad. Did you guys ever have any conversations before you guys got in theater about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we both kind of giggled, because there's never been a single trip where they told you where you were going on the face of the earth that you actually went to that spot. Like, you're reasonably assured you're going to that country. But as far as where, not that. So I remember we kind of laughed about that, like, imagine that, we got changed. And where we were going in the east wasn't any better, so it wasn't like more or less kinetic, it was just different. So, and it was just kind of, oh, I know where we're going. It was kind of that weird thing, like, oh yeah, I've been there. Oh yeah, they're savages there. This is gonna be fun.
Kind of walking up to, July 31st, 2012, you're 24 hours into an all-night patrol, or, as you called it, a sleepover. You're trudging back through the field. You and Greg share that, little smart-ass quip that you were talking about, ducking like real soldiers. What was his face like in that moment, grinning, steady, before the world turned upside down?
It made the day better. I don't know how else to say it. It made the day better. There's just some people like you can go through miserable experiences with, and they make that miserable experience fun. Fun's the wrong word. They make it a memory. They make it a good memory. Fun is the wrong word. Like, horrible experiences are never necessarily fun, but there's just those certain people that make them into good memories.
Oh, absolutely. That resonates with me. That ambush hits, man. PKM fire rakes the field. Tim yells over the radio, Greg's hit. You get up, you sprint. You see the hole through his helmet. His head has an injury. What's the first thing that gut punched you as you drop beside him and you start putting hands on this wound as the medic?
The gut punch had already started. They call it team daddy. But anybody that's ever had kids knows, or a significant other knows that tone of voice when you hear your name. And when there's no radio etiquette, it's just your name. Tim called, and what he said, Carl. There's only one reason somebody says my name like that, and it's not for a team sergeant. Fuck. And then Greg's hit. So the gut punch had already happened because nobody on the team's dumb. They're all hyper intelligent. So to say my name like that and the Greg's hit, you already know. Like, this is what I was trained for. But yeah, you'd never want to use that training. So I go running up there, and yeah. And when I heard Greg's hit, I'm expecting it to be something I can affect. It's pretty sad to say. I would have rather him get taken it through the chest. I can work with, but through and through head. And I still, it's funny. You've heard other people talk about like the random technical stuff that goes through your head. Like, well, at least it's open. So I have time for ICP. Some. There's no intracranial pressure. There's no end all be all, but maybe there's a little time. And then, all right, let's get to it. And then we're still taking rounds. So in the modern things, it's care under fire, but you're behind cover. I mean, you asked for the gut punch, but yeah, it was a series of gut punches.
In those moments of crisis, how did you balance your roles, Carl, as both the medic and the acting team sergeant? Well, you were the team sergeant, you weren't the acting. What were the most challenging decisions you faced kind of in that moment? Moments, I guess.
Well, team sergeant was simple. We had already discussed that. MARSOC's huge amount of positives, but I mean, there's double sides to everything. Like, they're very kinetic. I mean, Marines. They grew up Marines. Everything's kinetic. Awesome. We already knew, like, you can't be, because Pat wasn't there at that point. You can't be the only medic and a team sergeant. So, I mean, the team already knew that. So it was basically like Tim already knew, like, you team sergeant. Like, we ran it. At that point, we kind of ran it like some of the other units. It's like, all right, so we got 1 IC, 2 IC, 3 IC, 4 IC, 5 IC. So 1 IC is dealing with radio.
And for those that's listening, 1 IC is the first person in charge, 2 ICs, no, you're good. Second person in charge.
So first person in charge dealing with radio and the thing. So Dave, got it. 2 IC has to turn in the medic. 3 IC is the patient. Well, like technically Mike, 3 IC, but Mike's looking at me, and I'll get to that here in a second. So Mike was out of the equation, and I'll come back to that. So it's like, Red, Tim, take it. That was it. Like, there was, I mean, that's part of the reason I love the team. Like, you got this. And then turn to Greg. Now, I may be jumping a little bit ahead. Part of the reason that Mike was out of the equation, and this was a huge lesson learned that I still try and teach to the medic students this day. Polis litters are horrible. I had a Polis litter. The infantry medic Baker had a Polis litter. I can't remember Tim. Somebody else had a Polis litter. I probably even slapped 2 or 3 of them on the ANA and the locals.
We've talked about this Polis litter a lot with other people, and I waited till we talked to you since you're the medic. Can you explain what a Polis litter is?
It's a blanket with handles.
No.
So it's something that you can roll up and just do it. You can unroll it. It's basically like a blanket with handles. Yeah, it's a little more technical than that, but the only benefit to a Polis litter is cube weight. I can make it, fall, and carry it, versus a folding rigid litter, which is basically its own dedicated backpack or carrying device. Now, we were doing sleepovers with the ALP, doing all sorts of walking. So by every SOP known, Polis litters were the absolute, not a bad call. Looking at it from that way. But Mike had looked at me like, do you want the litter for the truck? And we had a huge conversation with just our eyes, as I went through the entire decision making. And he and I, without talking about it, knew exactly what we were asking. It's basically I can't remember, it was exactly 5Ks. It was at least 3 to 5Ks through bad guy territory, and the initial thing to grab it. But now it's changing from pure technical and tactical decision making to my brother is the casualty. I looked at it and in my head I'm thinking like, well, Polis litter absolutely would have moved Greg, absolutely. But to understand, Greg's vital signs at that point were completely stable. Airway was great. So the last thing I wanted to do is basically put him in a blanket like this with an open head injury, knowing that we still had to move through contact and get out. The rest of that situation hadn't developed at this time. So Mike looked at me, do you need the litter from the truck? And I only said one word, yes. And what Dave didn't realize is he's probably like you, from me to you away, but he's out of that conversation. He could be inches away, but everybody's doing their lanes. And Mike was there, and yes, knowing full well what I'm asking him to do, but I could not see Greg continuing to stay that stable through an unknown, jarring movement with that particular injury folded up upon himself when he's stable now. So I know Dave gets like, oh, no, we had a ton of litters. We just didn't have a rigid, and we still needed a little bit of time, because at that point we're still actively taking fire, and the last thing you want to do is put 4 people straight up vertical out of cover actively in it. So we had a little bit of time, still needed to get Greg packaged a little bit. So yes, go. And that was a brutal decision. I didn't spend any amount of time making it, but it was still a brutal decision. I don't know if I articulated that well. But
Perfect. This one's going to be kind of a tough question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. You're the medic. the guy who's supposed to fix this. But there is no life-saving intervention, just stable vitals and an open skull. How did it tear at you to cover Greg's wounds, slam Baker, the infantry medic, down so he didn't get hit from the gunfire, knowing that there's just not a whole lot you could do, Carl?
So the first thing, I'll start with the easy part. Baker was outstanding. Love that kid. He decided he was going to get out. I was basically trying to give that guy open, blatant nepotism. Like, I will talk to everybody I know at SOC. I'm like, get your butt through and go. But it was that. He was that awesome of a guy. All right, next hardest aspect of that, I'm trying to back my way into your question. I still remember Baker getting too high, and I watched a 7.62 round basically enter the bottom of his A-bag, go through the top. While Greg's head's here, I'm basically right here. Baker was kind of that. I watched the round go through, and I can't remember if I grabbed him. I can't remember exactly how I grabbed him, but it basically scolded, like, get your fucking ass down. Like, oh crap, we're still taking fire. And then Greg, like, the hardest, and what I teach medics, the current medics, is the hardest thing to do, especially if you have any amount of training or technical expertise in whatever that is, whatever that job is. The hardest thing to do in an emergency is nothing. But we did what we could do, like keep it clean, it's an open head injury. Like at this point, like Greg's still salvageable. And I hate to say it like that. It sounds very unempathetic, but there's a certain part of psychopathic disconnect to be able to get the job done. So Greg's still salvageable. So let's keep the outside where it's supposed to be, the inside where it's supposed to be, keep that clean. All right, start running through it, like clear airway, position head. That was part of the reason. Just by the letters, because you're stressed. You have no freaking cognitive load. Like your RAM, like you might as well be running on like 8 megabytes of RAM, because if it's more than like a 3-sentence thought at best, it's outside. So you're by the numbers, just going through it. Thank God for great training, going through it. So by the numbers, like there's nothing to do. There's nothing to do. All right. It's relatively simple ALS or advanced life support, but IV access, like, all right, it's not needed to save his life and we're still taking rounds, but I want to get hypertonics on. He's stable and it's an open, all right, no. Airway, can I get an advanced airway? Try and increase oxygenation, get a little bit of vasoconstriction going on in the head. Obviously didn't have end tidal down, and expired CO2 metrics. I didn't have that out at that point, but let's get that down. Let's get that vasoconstriction. Wait, he doesn't need an airway. And oh, by the way, we're taking rounds. Ready to move.
You send Mike out. You don't really send. This is, in talking to the other people involved, this is like a split second thing. Mike says, I'm going. Dovid says, I'm going with. What's it like to watch them kind of disappear? Did you even process that?
I trusted him. Hey, I'm going to go jump on that tiger. All right, well, I'm busy dealing with this alligator. Bad metaphor, but...
No, it makes sense.
Like, go.
So they go, they come back. They got a litter. Were you a part of that conversation? Obviously everybody on the team knows you guys need a medevac. I know they were struggling with the 9-line. David's trying to stack air. They're trying to get the helicopters. The helicopters won't come in. Talk to me about that kind of frustration.
The first frustration was muscle failure, because I had already mentioned a smaller element. Baker, some of the infantry dudes were there, but we needed people on guns. We're taking fire. Nobody on the team wants somebody outside of the team carrying it. And it wasn't a dig. Like, the infantry cats with us were great. It wasn't a dig. It's just, this is immediate family business. It doesn't mean that the extended family is still not welcome, but you're actually more coherent, like, turn guns out, don't watch me. So, muscle failure. Greg's a big dude. Was. Until you've carried 280 pounds of man meat on a litter, you don't realize how grueling it is. And when I say that, I mean, he's still wearing kit. Because I'm not taking his body armor off. And we're trying to go through ditches, irrigation, over things. And you got a single arm. You got 4 of us, but you got a single arm on that, and you're going through this. And the worst part about muscle failure is it doesn't matter how much is still here when the wrist just won't keep gripping, it won't keep gripping, and we're not in a position to trade out, and nobody's gonna drop him. So there's already that sheer agony in every visual aspect of it, from mental to emotional to physical. So that was the first mental hurdle. The second one was, yeah, we got Medevac. I'm not gonna get into them, but there's nothing like, oh, I hear them. And we called it in. I know David called it in Zulu, which means like, it's hot, bring gunships with it. This is a hot LZ. And there was 2 Apaches with the freaking Blackhawk. And it's staying over there. We're over here. So that was almost like, oh, awesome. And now we're still moving it. Oh, and we start taking rounds again. Every time there was about to be a lull, there'd be another set of, there's more, we take more rounds, so now we're moving. So we ended up doing that, recreating the movement that Mike and David did to get to our trucks, with the other guys on the trucks, with the litter. And every open space, David would attempt to get the birds back in there, or attempt to get, we're looking at 2 Apaches, armed Apaches. We're troops in contact. You're Apaches, I got it, you're escorts for Medevac, but one of you can't one of you can't blow some shit up? Even just open up with some guns, because that changes the dynamic of the battlefield. Air superiority changes some crap. And then we keep going to the next and the next. And that 5Ks took maybe some of the other guys have a better recollection. I was obviously target fixated on Greg, but I swear it was an hour to get of a movement. The entire time we're staring, well, not the entire, 3/4 of that time we're staring at the aircraft, the Medevac. And then of course, just random thing, David would key up the mic, and people are hot, like, I'm gonna kill those in the background. And now the pilots are claiming they're scared to land. Maybe they were, but it didn't change the fact that your brother's sitting there on a litter and you could see the birds, but they won't come. And you called it indeliberate, and there was 2 Apaches, and they won't come.
I can imagine, well, I can't imagine, but I can feel the frustration both in your voice and some of your teammates that have, already kind of told their story. Carl, you climb into the Medevac, you're covering Greg's blood, man. You got your Pink Floyd stained red t-shirt. You're kind of really upset at the Medevac crew, probably rightfully so. What was it like handing them off in Shindand when the Medevac bird landed up there where 2-2 was stationed at?
Brutal. No 18 Delta, no soft medic wants to trust their teammates' care to somebody else, but at the same time, no soft medic wants to deny better care. I'm a mitigation strategy. I'm not an end-all be-all. But rewinding a little bit, like the crew was fine on board. Like they were scared shitless of me. Like they were like, I mean, we're in a firefight, so you're amped up. Like there's no thin veneer of civility anymore when you're deployed, let alone you're just coming out of a firefight. So it's completely primal. So, I mean, we joke, even at work now, like you have outdoor cats and indoor cats. Like the feral outdoor cat is now cooped up on a bird with their freaking brother with it. Yeah, they were sketched out. And, I mean, they did nothing wrong in the aircraft. Like there was a situation, and I know they were dealing with hire. They were dealing with their hire. Time does heal some wounds, so they were dealing with hire.
David talked about it. I mean, David was the JTAC, right? They called in the helicopters, and I remember him telling us the story that, you know, when the Medevac bird landed and they were kind of rushing, you guys were rushing Greg to the Black Hawk. This, you know, little girl gets off that, you know, was the
medic,
the flight medic or whatever, and David kind of ran up there and was about to give somebody the business, and he sees this girl, and then he's like, oh man, he turned around, you know, it's...
Yeah. And that calmed me down a little bit, because I still remember, like, I think she said, sir, too, like, you have to sit down, and of course the pilots are trying to fly, and you even like felt the aircraft juke again, because they all looked back at me. And there was a little bit of like, I'm the monster. All right, let me sit my ass down. There's not really much to do for Greg at this point, so it's not really, that calmed me down. Like I said, decision-making's going 1,000 miles an hour. So kind of that realization, like a little bit of the, like, look yourself in the mirror. All right, I'm covered in blood. I look like a feral wombat right now. I'm talking like a freaking crazed beast. I'm ready to pick a fight with Mother Nature itself. And they're trying to do it, and when like all three of them are looking at me with like, all right, let me sit my ass down. There's nothing at this moment more to do for Greg. I can be safe with them. I don't need to exacerbate the situation. So I sat my ass down and I'm sure I still sketched them out. Because I mean, I don't think I blinked the entire time just staring at Greg, because it was a short air trip up there. And then, like, I know I told Kevin, but I'll tell the rest of 2-2 from, like we just, that team and us, like, it's almost like one team a lot of times, one big team. So getting off the aircraft and then with Greg and seeing them there. And then, like, I've been trying not to cuss, but it's kind of like, wait a second, there's Fletcher and Edwards. What the fuck are they doing here? Like, what? All right, whatever. Let's get Greg in there. And we did a handoff. And I remember just clinically doing the handoff of the receiving dock. Because there was no documentation. I mean, we were getting shot at. My dad, so boom, 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 boom. And then I remember rattling off all the things to him I hadn't done. I hadn't done this. I haven't facilitated this. I haven't done this. And he was a smart enough. I mean, he was a smart enough doc. He got exactly what I was doing. It's like.
And let me just pause you just for 1 second. So just so our listeners out there kind of understand what happens when somebody like an 18 Delta or a paramedic that's transporting a trauma patient to the hospital. When Carl talks about the handoff, you know, as the 18 Delta, you're handing off your patient to a higher level of care. And so there's a lot of things that need to be told. What treatments were done, you know, what's been done, what his injuries are, you know, the vital signs, all that stuff. And so, Carl's really skipping over that because that's just a part of who you are and your training and stuff. But I just want to give the listeners out there who either probably don't have a medical background or don't have a military background so they understand, you were taking Greg to a higher level of care. And so there's a lot of information that needs to be passed off. And when you're talking about documentation, normally in the civilian world, there's a lot of paperwork that's done en route to a
Even
hospital.
in the military world, you should write stuff down.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I just want to paint that picture so that people are listening, they understand, there's a lot of information that you needed to pass to this. I think you guys were in a Roll 2 facility.
Yeah, it was receiving Roll 2 that received them to basically mitigate, attempt to stabilize, survive the next trip. And I remember feeling relieved-ish, as relieved as one could be, that the doc was astute enough to realize that I was basically attempting to micromanage them. Like, this is what I haven't done. I am basically deliberately telling you, which isn't necessarily appropriate, but again, it's your brother. Like, this is my expectation of your treatment without saying it that way. Like, I haven't done X, Y, and Z. And he kind of grabbed me by the shoulder and was like, got it. So that put me at ease would be absolutely wrong, because it did not put me at ease. But it gave me a little bit of leeway to feel comfortable enough to step back, go back out to 2-2, and get some stuff in order. Because the other thing that we kind of glossed over is one of those things, like, to evac with your patient or not evac. Generally, with a medic on board, you wouldn't evac. But that situation was so charged, and we had already got out of it. We were only like a K&a-half south of the VSP. So once we got out of the village and the birds, you could see the outside of the thing. So I still remember looking at Dave, I'm going to evac with Greg. 2-2's prepped. We have that. I'm going to evac with Greg, because originally I was only expecting to go to Shindand with him, and the team was already going to make its way up there. So I'll evac with Greg. It wasn't a no-brainer. Dave was like, yeah, go. So to understand the full 360, that's not necessarily typical, but the situation actually absolutely permitted it. And when you have a patient, no documentation, and they can't speak for themselves, it greatly helped. So it got to Shindand. I still remember, so we did the handoff. I know, kind of jumping around. Did the handoff, came out, and then I astutely became aware that, Siege Assertive leadership is there, and I'm in a pair of hiking sneakers, BDU pants, and a Pink Floyd shirt, which did I care about? I cared about it at that moment, and only in so much as I did not want to hear it. But they didn't care at that point. They were just doing it. They were pretty astute. They let 2-2 bring me in. I can't remember. Tommy, was it Kevin, Cam? Somebody gave me some clothes. I think I changed shirt. I don't remember. I had some clothes. Drank some water, back checked on Greg, and then evac'd to Kandahar. So Kandahar would be the Roll 3, or generally definitive care.
Before we get to Kandahar, how long were you in Shindand? Do you remember?
30 minutes, an hour, could have been 2 hours. At that point, I was in time warp.
Was the whole point to get him to Shindand? It was just enough to stabilize him to get him to Kandahar?
Absolutely emergency stabilization. I think more of have more resources. I'm not going to get into all the military jargon. Some more resources, ability to stabilize more effectively with a team and do that, and also make the call, because you don't want to inundate your higher echelons of care with stuff that can be resolved at a lower level. Even though nobody assumed Greg would be resolved there, but again, the aircraft weren't fueled, equipped, all that. So get it to there, stabilize it, prep to go to Kandahar, because we took fixed wing to Kandahar from the airfield. So we evac to Kandahar. So I remember going into the roll 3 and they're doing a borehole. And I really wanted to say when Doc was kind of talking me through the actual neurosurgeon, some of that we're talking through some of the stuff with Greg.
In Kandahar.
In Kandahar. It hit harder because I had no medication, nor did the roll 2 put any medication on Greg at this point to keep him down. Roll 2 might have done some, but mental status unchanged. Yeah. Ignorance is bliss, and there's so many times like I desperately wanted to be ignorant. And then doing that. So checked in on Greg. Greg, I want to say he stayed there approximately 24 hours. Maybe a little less before flying out to Germany. Obviously, I didn't accompany him to Germany. I just did that. Now, grateful to this day I went with him because of the administrative aspects of it. So facilitating some of that. And also, I've got to give a huge shout out to Mars Hawk, Mo, like the ops sergeant and all that, because I was freshly minted 8, but I was still an 8. I was still part of their clique, so to speak, at then. And I say that with no derogatory connotation. So kind of the senior NCOs, the MARSOC senior NCOs kind of got me. 2 of them deliberately. I want to say, was it Master, the one Master of Guns, EOD, may have been the other one with it. They're great peoples. Doesn't really matter. They were great peoples to us. And they actually kept me from doing a serious incident on the way back over to the soft compound.
You and I talked about this. Do you want to talk about this? I think it's the dichotomy. So people that don't understand, when the GWAT kicked off, early on in the GWAT, you had small compounds and it was kind of rugged. And then as the war progressed, big compounds like Kandahar, Balad, Bagram, they turn into these big bases. And with the big military presence comes things like, donut shops and TGI Fridays and...
Yeah, I'll tell it.
Yeah.
It's not really about it, but it's not about Greg, but it is the incident and just the charged and... Because I think it speaks... Honestly, I think that's a very visceral story that speaks to the metaphor of what a lot of veterans go through, period, with this, for lack of a better term, the social dissonance. Like you've lived in a world where the thin veneer of civility was not, and then come back like, really don't care who's winning American Idol. And there's nothing wrong with living your life, but it is a dichotomy to where you kind of came from a law of the jungle, where you tried to do might for right, but it was still a law of the jungle. So we're walking back from the roll 3, and there's an area at Kandahar that was called the Boardwalk. But at the beginning of the war, it was literally, basically like a pseudo fire pit in the middle. It had like a boardwalk, it's like plank, like rundown decking, relatively large area. I think set up some like Top Gun reminiscent volleyball court in it. But yeah, there was like a fire pit over there. It was like a go smoke a cigar smoker joke station. I want to say, like, of course, Green Beans always comes in with the coffee shop. If anybody's ever been deployed, like Green Beans, yeah, coffee. But that's what I remembered it as. But we're walking back, and now it's like an
outdoor mall.
Yeah, and we're walking by, and there's a TGIF Fridays. No harm, no foul. I mean, if you're stuck in a place for a year and there's amenities and it doesn't detract from the mission, sure. But at that point, I say sure, but at that point, we're just doing through it. And I still remember seeing a couple junior enlisted, like going to this TGIF Fridays. And they were complaining that their reservation. I heard the word reservation and complaining about it. And there was a little outdoor ashtray. And there was a big plate glass window with TGIF. You can probably do the math. Before I realized what was happening, I had that outdoor ashtray in it and was swinging to smash through that plate glass and just bull through a china shop, that TGIF. Like, remind them what the fuck is happening. Thank God for freaking stout Marines that are used to dealing with this. Because next thing I know is I'm in a respectful hucklebuck being taken to the soft compounds. And I'm like, all right, I'm good. I don't even know what the fuck just happened there. They're like, it's normal. But that mattered, like, to hear it from other old guys, like, you're fine. That was normal. Wasn't right, but it was normal. That mattered. Because it enabled me to go back and visit Greg without fear of, while I was there, without fear of being dumb.
Yeah. I mean, by the time you got to Kandahar, just so the leaders can kind of put all the pieces together, you guys had been up all night, with
multiple nights, yeah.
With your ALP partners, you guys getting this extended tick, troops in contact, gunfight. That was over the course of a couple hours. And then you have the Medevac into Shindand. That takes 30 minutes, an hour, whatever. Then you have the Medevac into Kandahar. I mean, by this time, you've been through a lot, man. Mentally, physically, emotionally. Your brain's stressed not only from dealing with injury to a close friend. You're also the team medic, and you're also the team sergeant. And so the weight of all that at extreme sleep depth and an extended combat engagement, is really kind of all coming to a head.
And just complete transparency, like, the legit team medic was Pat Simmons. He just wasn't there for that. Like I said, split teams. We still had a dedicated Delta, but Pat just wasn't, by nature, I mean, it just wasn't there on that mission. And then just dealing with that. So just complete transparency.
Sure.
Because that rubs on Pat to this day. Like, there's nothing worse than, Kevin said it too. Everybody said it. Like, the worst thing to do is nothing.
Well, it's hard, man. I mean, you're a person in the time that I've gotten to know you. You're a person of action. You're a caring person. You're empathetic. And, here this was, one of your closest friends, your confidants, a fellow E8, a guy that was, probably going to take the team after this deployment, and somebody that you relied on, somebody that you trusted and you respected, and you're having to deal with this. And, I know it's hard to deal with as the medic, and I also have a medical background as well. And there are times when there is just things you can't do, but it's still hard when you're a person of action that wants to take action and there's no action to be taken. You and I talked about this when we were preparing for this interview, and even now how that sits with you. I mean, you teach medics now. You are a very seasoned, not only 18 Delta, but also instructor. And even we talked about during the course of our preparation work about how there's nothing you could have done, right? But it's still hard. You still want to do something. You still want to be there in that moment, not just because it's your friend, but it's because who you are and you want to do. And so, I've understood this dichotomy with you of wanting to do something when there's nothing to do, and it's still hard. It's hard to accept, and it's something that you and I have talked about both on and off camera. I kind of just want to, ultimately Greg goes to launch stool. I'm not sure if I think you said it was about 24 hours, and have to start processing this. If I could take you back a little bit in time, before Greg gets shot. What's your last memory of you and him together, before that incident?
Walking across that field while just the random shots, just smiling. That subtle smile. When I say smiling, I'm not talking about the, no, it's almost like that smirk smile. Like, you're tired, you're like, we really should IMT. My back and my knees. think that's what Greg said, like my back and my knees. I was like, my hips, so my neck. He said something smart ass. But it was that, it didn't change like us doing the right thing. And just so nobody gets the wrong impression, we were kind of in defilade at where we were. So we weren't taking, like the bulk of the rounds weren't necessarily coming through us. We're just doing it. And anybody that's ever been shot at with small arms, pop shots at that point, it was pop shots from over a K out. It's like, it's almost indirect fire. Like, I'm not saying it was completely the right thing at that moment, but in the grand scheme of things, it was benign is not the right word, but because we've also been around, like we knew the grueling part was coming. Heard the stories, the old bull and the young bull standing on a hill. Familiar with that one?
I don't think so.
How slightly crash. Is it all right to tell us slightly vulgar? So an old bull and a young bull are standing on a hill. The young bull goes to the old bull, hey, let's run down that hill and fuck a cow. And the old bull looks at the young bull and goes, let's walk down the hill and fuck them all. So that's partly what we were smirking about. Like, the grueling part is about to happen. Walk when you can.
Sure. If you can
or you're 18 and you've just got, and I think we were like, I'm acting like everybody understands. Like Greg and I are like looking over like at the 18-year-old IMTing like, yeah, sure, I guess if you've got all the energy, but is the old bull like, you know, like that wall I joked about earlier with like, hey, we should act like soldiers. We both knew without talking about it, that was kind of the line of demarcation of once we crossed that mofo, it was already game on, but once we crossed that wall, then it was time to start IMTing, and that shit is hard. If you haven't done it, like it will tire you.
And just so the listeners know, IMT is, individual movement techniques. And when you're in, a gunfight, one of the things that you do and you learn in the military, I think it's taught in basic training, is 3-second bursts. You're up, you run for 3 seconds and you get down. And basically you stand up, you run and you say, I'm up, they see me. And by the time you can say that, I'm down. And what Carl's talking about is if you do that consistently over a period of time, it will wear yourself out when you're wearing full kit in a gunfight, breathing. So, yeah.
Because the other common mistake, whether you're a boxer or even in that, which you don't realize, because we'd always laugh, is like, why am I getting so winded? Like, I actually like tried to get in shape, like got in great shape before it, because you forget to breathe. So it's one of those, it sounds silly, but ask any boxer, ask any combat vet that's done it. Like when you get amped up, like in your line of one, you get worked up, like there are times like you will forget to breathe, you will hold your breath. And then you're wondering why you're smoked 10 seconds into it. Well, because you haven't breathed. So just the full scope of it, like we're walking right now when we can, like, and meanwhile we're giggling, like, all right, I mean, I could, basically the conversation we're having without having words, I could try and tell you at this point, but you're gonna have to learn. Because they are shooting at you. I can't have a calm conversation with a dude that's in one of his first couple firefights. Like, you're doing the right thing. So why would you correct the right thing for a nuance of experience? Yep, IMT, we just know we're gonna need to wait at that wall a little longer for you to catch your breath. And then look over at you and be like, did you drink water?
Great point. So you're sitting in Kandahar, man. Greg's headed to launch stool. You've done everything you can. You both as the team sergeant and the medic. Now you got to go back to the VSP. How did you and the team, or how did you help the team, or how did you guys come together as a team to kind of, overcome what you guys just went through?
Team was, good's the wrong word. for lack of a better word, the team was good. I mean, Dave was there, Mike was there, Tim was there, like Pat, freaking David, Gray, Dylan, like the Rich with the J-Tag, like they were all there. They were good. 2-2 was supporting. They were good, but my first order of business was getting back there as soon as possible because I meant to go with Greg, but it wasn't supposed to be away. So there was that dissonance to get back because everybody in between, good intentions, wanted me to take a second to breathe. I'm like, fuck you, I want to get back. Like, what part of this is, sound like an ass, but like, you're not the people I want to be with. I want to be with the team. And not just for the, I mean, there's some selfish part of it too. Like, I want to be with my team. Also, like, the team needs to be together. You don't go through crisis by being separate. I mean, that just, it's team, so just trying to get back. So just Kandahar trying to chill me out. And then, I mean, even the battalion leadership trying to chill me out because I ended up having to go through Bagram to catch air back out. And battalion leadership, I mean, awesome. Sergeant Major, like, trying to do things, like trying to put me up in the VIP housing last thing, because originally I found like a overflow B hut that was empty. Just put my stuff at the back. It was basically stare at the wall, like, is it time to go yet? It's time to go. Like, no, go to the VIP. I'm like, I don't want luxury. I mean, I went because, again, I think what helped me the most from a personal thing, and I dare say I know it helped Dave as well, is being in that leadership position, because now you're not existing for yourself. So by proxy of the, sounds bad, but the obligation of putting others before yourself, the hardest step is the first step, and it's easier to edit from there. So the obligation of the duty is kind of like that first step, and then you can edit, you can dial your feelings in from there. So I just wanted to get back. I'm in charge, have the thing, so let's get back and do that. Like, the team is in a spot. I'm not really sure at this point how the team is doing. Yeah, we've had some phone calls, but I need the unspoken. I need I need the feel of you to know how you're doing. Just to get back, like, how are we doing? How are we going to get through this? We're going to get through this. What? So getting back. So I know I'm being slightly disjointed, but it's hard. And my memory's shoddy at this point because I hadn't slept. None of us had slept, just went through this. And now I dare say, like, the brain's just trying to just shut down. And I'm like, yeah, fuck you, keep going. So the memory's a little spotty. I didn't argue with Tony Mongold about the VIP housing. I'm like, because I got it. Like, that's where I was going. To be in charge, like, this means something to him. This is his way of trying to do something.
This is the Siege Assotif commander you're referring to?
No, this was the Sajodov, our actual battalion leadership.
Oh, okay.
And no matter how anybody, like, felt about him, same time, it's still a human being, it's still an SF dude. And the worst thing is being able to do nothing. So I still remember that was like, oh wow, look I'm actually making a mature social decision. Like, he is attempting to do what he can. So fine, I'll go to the VIP housing because I know it may something for him. So that was kind of how I initially got through it. It's like, all right, fine, I'll do that because I know it means something to you. So I know it means something to you. I'll get through this. I think I checked in with Battalion Med or something. I just did some stuff to do some stuff. And then eventually, Kevin just reminded me, I did go through Shindand. I don't remember. If anything, it was just brief.
To get back to your...
Yeah, the team met me up there. It's coming back. Like, the team met me and then I drove back. I did go through 2-2. Through Shindand back, and then we got back. And they had done that op, which Marsoc briefly told me about. I'm like, awesome. Is everybody okay? I vaguely remember that because, yeah, I wanted that vengeance. Greg and I were a little different. Vengeance wasn't the right word. There needed to be retribution. At least from my standpoint, it wasn't necessarily vengeance. There needed to be retribution. There needed to be some closure in that, and 2-2 did it. They went down, did some closure with that. I still remember being fucking deathly scared, though. I'm like, no. Because it was hot. No, nobody else. And then, like, not even any of the A&A. Like, no, nobody else. Like, just overwhelming. Because, I mean, there was occasionally, it kind of almost felt like an unfair fight, some of that. Because, I mean, we had, you know, developed nation leveraging air superiority and just do it. Which at that point, like, there was no fairness. Get retribution, get it done, and nobody get hurt. So I remember being relieved hearing, like, they got back. I was like, thank God. And so there was that part, en route. And I got back. And it's kind of a little bit of a haze.
When do you remember finding out, you know, that Greg had ultimately succumbed to his wounds?
When we spoke with Beth. And Dave and I think even Mike, everybody, like, we're trying to prep for it. I vaguely remember having a no shit conversation with Dave at one point. Like, with that hope, like, you're hoping, but you know. Like I said, it was already seeing it, and I know, like, Dave knew. So, I mean, I think we were, if I remember correctly, we were both, and it sounds horrible to say if I remember correctly, but I mean, I was not sane at that moment. I was not sane for a couple weeks. Now, that doesn't mean like infunctional and wasn't technically, tactically proficient, but I was running on pure training. So things were a little bit hazy. And I remember agreeing with, like, we needed to be careful about ops. We had to get back on the horse. I remember doing that. We did some presence patrol, like, you got to get back on this horse. We got to get some semblance of normalcy back in ops, just for the, like, get back on the horse. But I remember having a vague, like, yeah, like, we knew it was coming. You didn't want it to come, like, you desperately didn't want it to. But there's a part of you that was already prepped. So I'm not saying that anybody was necessarily surprised, but it was still devastating. Because it was the final answer.
How did you guys process that, both you individually and then you guys as a ODA?
Everybody did a little different. We did a lot more everybody was more involved in even the simplest, like going out on a mission. Like, all right, what are your thoughts? Just like getting everybody involved. Kind of encouraging people to do something. I know, like, I personally took it out on the weights. I beat the hell out of those plates. I don't know how I didn't break myself. I just lifted heavy shit until it hurt. And then rinse, repeat as soon as I was able. And then go on mission. I still remember, I vaguely remember, it might sound silly, but I vaguely remember, like, I can't do it to my legs, I gotta be able to walk. Like, I gotta be able to walk. Like, I can't crush my legs to death. I have to be able to walk. That was like a mantra in there. I remember doing that. And then slowly, probably fast compared to the rest of the civilian world, but slow to us. Day by day, kind of came back. There was still the hole. I came back. And the day I really remember feeling like I came back was when we got the new junior medic. Faulkner came in, Austin. Because I remember getting mad. He's a kid. I say kid, he wasn't a kid. But kid got told, go meet your team downrange. Oh, by the way, they just lost their fox. So you're like, oh, wow. I'm like thinking back to me as a cherry. Like, cherry is a euphemism, inappropriate euphemism for somebody that is still a virgin. So like, one hell of a way to lose your SF virginity, come in on that. But I still remember I was amazingly impressed. Like, holy shit impressed by this guy. Because he was brand new as X-ray. He just came in the Army, like didn't even really know how the Army worked. They said, get your butt to there, and he had tough boxes. And I remember getting calls like, he needs counsel because he messed up DTS, the government travel system. I'm like, I'm gonna give him a good counseling statement. He's an SF dude. Like, he had no training, no idea how the government worked, and managed to get to the other side of the planet with 2 tough boxes and is sitting here. That's called success. Like, welcome to the team. Like, you just impressed me. Now, that might sound silly, but I remember thinking like, oh, wait, I'm thinking like that again.
One of the things you told me when we were preparing and we talked about Greg's loss, you told me Greg's loss almost broke you. It was pushing you towards the deep end, but you stayed sane for the team, right? The team was really your focus. I still think it is to this day. Not your focus, but just that enduring love you have for that team. How did you keep going those last few months, right? Because we've talked about it on a couple episodes, like, Greg got shot, but the war didn't stop. The war kept going. The team had to keep going. There's this enduring mission that must. And what piece of Greg did you carry to kind of hold yourself together? So you have, there's really 2 aspects to this question. How is it that, you were able to stay sane for your team? And then, what piece of Greg did you carry forward with you?
So keep those prompt me here, because there's actually, I got to hit that with 3 parts. I was a good team sergeant on that trip because of the team, because they handled me well. Whether I'm not, I might as well be a high-functioning autistic. So you either like me or you don't, but I can get bogged down in the minutia. I can nerd out and then go try and start a fight. Dave and Greg were great people. So they, like, being assigned friends with, like, Dave on that, like, yeah, sorry, Jerry Maguire, but, like, you complete me. And Greg was, part of that was, like, the people person. And, like, we jibed. Like, I would have think, like, we would have made it, like, if you could have kept us together, we would have been the best team sergeant. And probably more Greg carrying me than the other way around, as far as everything having to do with anything remotely social. Because Greg was both sympathetic and empathetic. I'm highly empathetic, very sympathetic. So Greg was there. So that was the piece I kept with it, like, all right, this is my weakness, this was Greg's strength. So they're part of it, what would Greg do? All right, obviously teammates are hurting. What would Greg do? And again, it was a rehash of sometimes the hardest thing is nothing. Like you're staring at Trey, Dylan, David, Tim, Austin, Dave, Mike, Rich, the other, let's not forget the infantry cats that were there with us. I mean, even the Terps, like everybody liked Greg. Everybody was hurting. We focused on the team. 2-2 was hurting. But the war's still going. There's still a mission, and just looking at it like, all right, they're dealing. Might not be completely healthy, but they're dealing. So do I go pick at the scab? Or do I just look? Keep my mind on it. And that's part of the thing. Like, you give me credit for being a great team sergeant. There's a fair amount of me that almost wants to call myself a creeper. And what I mean by that is I've kept tabs on the team. I've kept close tabs on them. Greg was the great communicator. And if it was to complete a mission, I could absolutely do it. But like this whole project and that is kind of bringing me back out because of that. I'm an introvert. I might be a gregarious introvert, but I'm still an introvert. So keeping tabs, and it's just kind of this whole thing is again a reminder of what would Greg do. Well, get off yourself. It doesn't matter if you're an introvert. Like, get back out there and engage. It's not fair to the relationship of anybody involved to go isolate yourself.
It's a great point, man. I mean, one of the things you also told me too was that you avoided facing, Greg's spouse for a while. Feeling that you didn't do enough. If you could sit with her now, what would you say about Greg, about that day, about the man he was to you?
I love you. I'm sorry for the loss, and so thankful. So thankful for the time. I mean, it's a bitter pill, but the most beautiful things in life are also fleeting. So, I mean, nothing lasts forever, so it's that fleeting. So, even though it hurts, like, thank God for Greg. Thank God for him being there, because still the little things to this day. And like I said, sanity, part of like, I still want to, I never felt like Heather went, my wife went to memorial for it, always thankful for it. Still engaged in memorial while we were deployed. And Heather, she's a great people person. She did that. And then when we got back, it was kind of a little bit of that wallowing, for lack of a better term. Like, I just really didn't feel like I deserved positive things from them. Because there's a difference between logical understanding and emotional understanding. I logically understand I did all of it, but I am the emotional, like, I could have been a bigger dick that day as a team sergeant and enforced bounding Overwatch. Logically, I know, like, we were herding cats with the ANA and ALP. I logically understand emotionally, and then I was the mitigation person between for Greg's well-being, and I didn't succeed. I mean, yes, audacity, but to do what we do in the operational environment, you've got to be audacity. You've got to be audacious. But on the flip side, that can sometimes kick you in the butt, and I'm still getting over it. That it didn't work out. And I didn't feel I deserved I didn't feel like I deserved that, which time has helped heal it. And then I felt guilty, like, well, why wasn't I more involved? And then vicariously through some of the other team members. So again, thank you and the team for this, a certain amount of catharsis. I didn't realize how long I was actually wallowing in some of those feelings. Because it comes to a certain point, you kind of get used to the pain. You kind of get used to the scar. It doesn't mean it's healthy. It just meant that you learn to deal with the limp instead of fixing the limp. But the day-to-day, the next thing you know is just a year-to-year. I don't know if I really accurately answered your question.
No, you did, man. I think sometimes there's a healing, man. I mean, I've watched you go through this this kind of evolution from the time we presented the story, then we prepared for the story and talked about it, and then, as we've, been here on our set location and talked you through the week, and, sometimes time doesn't heal all wounds, but sometimes, we're not meant to be alone, right? And to watch you from a distance as you've re-engaged teammates and your old team captain and, guys from other ODAs, it's been cool to see it from the other side, We're kind of in this home stretch. I know, I've sent your brain for a mental jog. One of the things you do, you're an avid instructor, still teaching, still instructing, it's kind of who you are, Carl. And now you're teaching medics. How do you see Greg in your fight to keep guys alive today? And how has that loss shape your view on, teaching new medics medical training?
Keep it simple, stupid. And remember, it doesn't matter if you like it or dislike it if somebody's counting on you to do it. And that was, Greg did that as well. Like, you don't have to like something to not realize it's necessary. So, it's just full scope. If you're a part of any type of team, and you don't have to be soft, like I'm not teaching soft medics, like you're still a part of that team. And by virtue of your position as a medic, you are heart of that team. You might not run it, but you're supposed to be one of the most trusted members of it. So again, it's kind of a little bit of what would Greg do with that. And at the same time, just because a subject is complex doesn't mean that you've got to tackle it in all its complexity. Keep it simple, stupid. Break it down and deal with it and be a pragmatist about it. Like, Greg was great at that but also people looked at it a lot of times as humor, but it was more than just humor. It was, all right, like, hey, idiots are human. So in the spirit of being human, I'm not a human calculator. So I've got to do my arithmetic one step at a time. So let's do the steps. Oh, and by the way, nobody likes practicing their arithmetics, but we can still do little things to not make it horrible during that, even if that's how we interact with each other. So be the heart, appreciate that people are counting on what you're doing. That doesn't mean that you got to be stressed about being counted on. It just means appreciate it. And then also, like, one of the things that Greg reinforced with me is embrace your own, sorry, a medical saying, but embrace your own bedside manner. Like, be you, be authentic. If your authentic is a weirdo, well, then don't try to not be a weirdo, or you're just going to come across not authentic and weirder. Yeah. Like, embrace your weird, but be proficient.
This is Greg's story through your eyes, Carl. What's the one truth about him, whether it's his heart, his grit, his light, his humor, that you need this podcast story to scream to the world?
Smile in adversity. And one of those other things, Greg and I, we started out friendly, but through kind of the lead up and pre-mission training and the time on deployment, really did become a close friend. I kind of regret some of time, because I wish I would have really known Greg well before the trip, and then obviously for everybody involved well after the trip. Because I can just only imagine, I really truly feel like we'd be blessed in life to have, 4 or 5 really close friends. I never really got to see if Greg would have been that, but no matter what, it did feel a little cut short. It's hard to believe just like how much of a friend somebody can kind of become. And he was that way to everybody on the team, absolutely. But even over a period of a year, it was profound. It feels like it was years, but realistically looking, it was like a year and a half, and they got that close. I really wish would have had the opportunity to really see where that went.
Yeah, there's a famous quote, right? I don't remember who said it, and I can't remember, what the full aspect of the quote is, but, it's something, rather than mourn these men that have lost, be thankful that we had these men for the time that they lived. And I think that embodies, from what I've seen, who Greg was, man. We didn't get a lot of time with him, or you guys didn't get a lot of time with him, but you guys all seem so thankful for the time that you had. And
Absolutely.
That really embodies this story. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
What message do you hope to pass on to future soldiers about the cost of war, the bonds of brotherhood, and the sacrifices made on the battlefield?
Learn your real history. Learn the fun stuff. Like those talks we mentioned with Greg. Like we challenged the fundamental faith in things. That didn't mean that it made us remotely unfaithful. Like look at it. So where I get like the authentic history. Like Greg may or may not have, but if you're going to be a soldier, read Charge of the Light Brigade, and then find the dark humor in it. Like into the Valley of Death, Road 100. Like, yeah, all we have is horses and sabers. Let's go charge the tanks and machine guns. You're a soldier, but embrace that. You can call it dark humor, but find that. Also, I can't remember a particular item with Greg that brought up, but in the spirit of Greg, like understanding your own history as a soldier, like the actual story of the first Thanksgiving is hysterical. And anybody that's remotely ever had a family and been a soldier absolutely should just like die laughing at it. So there the Pilgrims were. They're getting ready, so the Iroquois are like, what the hell's going on? I'm paraphrasing a bunch, obviously. What the hell's going on? Like the freaking Pilgrims sound like they're freaking troops in contact. Like they're like getting ready to like go at us. So let's get the war band up and go charge them. Like, oh. You get up there, you're in the wood line, and then you realize, like the Pilgrims being the Indige, well, not opposite, but the Pilgrims being, the unwanted partner force, like, oh no, they just really suck at shooting. Like they haven't hit anything. And here you are with a war band, so it's like showing up at key leader engagement, like, oh, you need some help? So yeah, let's just do, okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah, we came for dinner, not a raid. It was dinner, absolutely dinner, and that's my story. I'm sticking to it. And then I can just imagine, like the Iroquois turning around to their wives, go make food. And then, of course, anybody that's ever been in a relationship, their wife's like, I'm gonna fucking murder you later. So they're off doing it, and then here are all the Iroquois dudes like trying to like do a Kiali, like with their awkward body language, like, yeah, we're absolutely like here to what do you celebrate? Yeah, we're here to celebrate you making it, like prepping for, you know, a good harvest in winter. Yeah, that sounds right. And meanwhile, like they're still getting dirty. The Iroquois are still getting dirty looks from their wives. Like, when you come back later, you're dead, as they're cooking and bringing it. And then there's the first Thanksgiving feast. That to me is hysterical. And yeah, I got it. Even the real history, when you do it, that's not how it's articulated, but having been deployed a bunch, like I know how it went down. I can't say with 100% certainty, but I can say with 99% certainty, that's how that shit went down. And that's funny, and that's real. And that's how history went down. So this is the history of our nation, and it was made and forged by real people doing it. Like I still remember talking with Greg, like, grew up on Vietnam movies, but they were always in that kind of off color, like just doing it. But you think back, like 2012 was just as vivid as outside is right now. Like, yeah, time inexorably marches forward, but it was yesterday in the grand scheme of things, and it was just as colorful. It wasn't this arbitrary thing that happened on TVs or movies. It was this real life event in 4 dimensions: length, depth, width, and time. I know some of you heard me talk about that. It was this full scope, this full human experience. There, back here, political, not political. There's the full scope authenticness. I mean, but that takes some work to dig up, and it takes pushing through some of the spins in the Hollywood. But it's worth digging up, because that is the real history. That's the real story. That is the funny holiday dinners with family that you hated at the time, but now you can't help telling the stories, and it just makes you laugh. Because, like, how did my uncle get that drunk so quick? How did he set the cat on fire? Like, how did that even happen? But that was the history. And it's the same with combat. Some might see it as like a dark humor, but it was just another aspect. And it was people, brothers, sisters, getting at it, but also living. Like, we didn't stop living because we went to combat. People back here didn't stop living because we went to combat. Life happened in the midst of that. And those are the memories.
Those are the memories. Looking back on your experiences, Carl, what key lessons about sacrifice, accountability, and resilience would you say define your career?
I'll start with accountability. I'm a big believer in accountability. Because at least for me personally, it's so easy to fall into the doldrum. And then I mentioned earlier, I'm a natural introvert, but the simple accountability. Now, I'm not talking accountability in a bad light. Like, we know each other now, so for a year from now, we're going to revisit that. We're going to revisit that. But that gives, like, me personally, that's a sense of purpose. I now have some accountability. So over the next year, that's there. I can't escape it. And that might sound overly pragmatic to some people, but that is weight. Some of that accountability, like you've mentioned it a couple times, Asher, with like, we're not meant to be alone. So part of that is that natural accountability. Sacrifice. so often, and not diminishing it, people talk about the huge sacrifices. So I want to talk about the day-to-day. Sacrifices of missing a soccer game. The sacrifices and the accountability again to not end up becoming a real life metaphor for cats in the cradle song. So it's those sacrifices, the sacrifice of the people that are audacious enough to try and love you despite who you are. And so we talk about spouses a lot too, and 100% deserving. But kids, the utter purity of like a kid's love, despite you deserving it. So it's those sacrifices, like with Gwen, and coming back to that, and then remembering to appreciate that, like the sacrifice of those day-to-day sacrifices of that spouse, that other, that friend that decided to love you despite you. That kid with that pure love, despite your failings. And the situation, whether it's combat, whether it's having to go to work, whether it's having to work 60 hours a week just to put food on the table, those sacrifices, the day-to-day that add up to a greater toll sometimes, a lot of times, than even the huge sacrifice. Those are, I'm trying not to ramble and I'm trying to keep it meaningful, but it's those small sacrifices that I've learned that are equally important to the greater ones, and not to forget about them and not to acknowledge them, because they don't pop up. They're not in your face, and those are the small things. And also in the spirit of Greg, like recognizing that those are happening, and even in some way, small way, paying homage to those that are committing those small sacrifices every day.
In my personal life, man, I've talked to people a lot about, to your point, big things versus little things. I think a lot of times in life as humans, whether we're parents, spouses, teammates, whatever, we focus on the big things, right? Anniversaries, birthdays, holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving. But really, it's, to your point, man, it's the daily small things that matter. The daily small things to your wife. We think it's the nice thing that we do for our wife on her birthday. No, man, it's really the small note that you left her that really means the most. Your kids, man. We think it's giving them some kind of huge present for their birthday, but really, they care about whether or not you showed up to play basketball with them that day, And I think you really hit the nail on the head when you talk about sacrifice. We focus on the large things, right? Greg's life was a sacrifice, but there's also a lot of other little sacrifices that people do on a daily basis. So I thought that's a great point, Carl. My last question for you, as kind of we close out, your episode, is how do you continue to honor Greg's memory in your personal life, professional work, and what does carrying that legacy mean to you on a daily basis?
He lived. His death happened, and he continues to live. I know what I meant. Now to explain it. The larger effect, the smaller effects that just continue to play, and not forgetting, not acknowledging where they came from. Like, it meant a lot to me to be able to be like, one of the things like Greg did, if we were talking about the schedule coming up, and as a team sergeant or any leadership position, you're like, hey, we need to be in at 4 tomorrow. Greg would turn around and be like, in the morning? And I still use that to this day. And it's nice to be able to remember that I'm plagiarizing that humor from Greg. And I'm plagiarizing it from that time on the team. Family. And then also just this is the harder one, and trying to remember how to do it. It can be hard to keep living. Now, that isn't a defeatist, that's not a suicidal ideation type thing. It just meant like, to borrow like from Winston Churchill, like old soldiers just slowly fade away. And I get it, like remembering Greg by just doing that. But the daily grind of, like you don't realize like how much you validated, especially when you start, none of us, Greg included, none of us were in special forces for a job or a career. It wasn't a job or a career. So many things, like there's no way you could be a school teacher, a legit school teacher as a career. You couldn't be a cop as a career. It is a way of life you chose, and then luckily the government or whoever gives you a stipend to live off of. So it wasn't a job. Now, where I'm coming from that is when you move on, right, wrong, or otherwise, you derived a fair amount of validation through that. Well, and I don't care how machismo somebody is, we all need validation. Ideally, healthily, it's all internal validation. Maybe not completely healthy, but a fair amount of it should be internal validation, but let's be real, we all need external validation as well. And you're deriving that from that. So like moving on, it gets hard sometimes. It's hard to keep going. Continue to find that validation. Continue to find that drive. Continue to find that next journey. Because destinations, and I know I'm borrowing from Waldo, but destinations are fleeting as that journey. And so continuing to experience and live that journey. And bringing a full circle back to Greg, like he absolutely in that time, especially in a team, and especially in how I knew him. And there's times of just, it's not fun right now. But yeah, he's still experienced, made memories. So continue that journey. It can be a slog sometimes, but when it starts to be a slog, again in the spirit of Greg, if it starts to feel like a slog, then it's probably time to reassess. Not that life isn't a slog, but to reassess, like, why is it feeling like a slog? And then how can this is me actually starting to heal lately, how can I reach out and incorporate more into my life? In what way am I not living right now that's making it a slog? So try and incorporate some of those things, some of those small goals, those daily milestones to where it becomes less of a slog. It still might be a slog in the background, but that doesn't mean that you're not starting to enjoy the journey again.
Amen to that. Well, as we kind of close out your episode, Carl, again, man, I think I said it at the beginning, but I just wanted to thank you for taking this ride with me and my crew, and, telling this story of somebody that was not only your teammate and a warrior and a soldier and a leader, but he was your friend, Carl. And that's become blatantly obvious and important, not only to you, but to the story. I know it took a lot to sit in this seat, the uncomfortableness of the cameras and the lights and, to relive this, but I also have come to know that you know how important it is to talk about it so that Greg's legacy continues to live on, especially for his daughter. So again, man, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you for what you've done for this nation. Thank you for your sacrifice, your service. You're not somebody that would ever ask for that. I realize that about you, but on behalf of a grateful nation, I'm thankful for guys like you and Greg and your teammates and, you know, the guys in the regiment that keep all of us safe, man. So thank you for taking this ride with us, man.
I appreciate it.
And, you know, everybody else, man, continue to stay tuned out there as we, you know, come full circle on the story. This is an extremely powerful story as we tell this life and this legacy of Master Sergeant Trent from these multiple different aspects of the guys that live this truth with Greg on the ground. So in the meantime, you guys stay safe out there. And if you can't be safe, be violent out here.